and welcome to the Sunday/Monday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove, and sitting across the table from me is a man so committed to the Total Soccer Show, he watched USA 0, Serbia 0, not once, but twice with me. It's Taylor Rockwell.
Hello, buddy. And for that reason, I would say this is definitely going to be the Monday very early morning show. Based on the hour of recording and how long it will take to edit and put out, I'd say Monday morning is safe.
So we are going to review USA v Serbia, Bruce Arena's first game back in charge. You may have heard ESPN2 mention that. And
you missed the part where they played the Welcome Back Cotter theme song and had a montage of him as like, welcome back, with him like doing coaching stuff and walking around and smiling. It was pretty ridiculous by ESPN.
I'm sure Jürgen Klinsmann loved watching that from home.
I'm going to guess he did. I wonder if he watched this game. And if he did, I wonder if he felt slightly justified in his actions.
Oh, okay. So this is the thing we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of the reaction to this game. People very frustrated that the US could not beat Serbia's, we've got to say, B team.
Maybe
at
C
best.
team, yeah.
Serbia's domestic league team.
Yeah.
Right? This was essentially an all-star game.
Yeah.
MLS US All-Stars versus Serbian domestic league All-Stars.
Yep.
So I would say we kind of agreed on first watch. Second watch, there were many more bright spots for the US national team, considering it was a 0-0 draw.
Yeah.
Right? And isn't this the way with January friendlies, right? You can say that these guys have been in camp for 3 weeks or whatever. It's still a January friendly. It is never full of goals and like really crisp, perfect soccer.
And I think to his credit, that was what I think Taylor Twellman said immediately at the final whistle. It was like when he asked what his final thoughts were about Ian Darke, he said, yeah, it's a January friendly. This is what you expect. Like heavy legs, tired legs, some good stuff, some bad stuff, and you learn from it. And I think that's the correct approach to this, is that there's no reason for heads to roll. There's no reason for, and even like in talking about what we learned from this game, which we're going to do, I noticed that we seem to have like actively avoided saying who's played their way out, who's no longer in consideration. There may be some people who are on that list, but I think, again, it's too easy to jump to conclusions based on one game in January where you're missing 6 to 7 of the US's usual starters.
That's true. Yeah, we forget this isn't the US's strongest team. I think because you see Michael Bradley and you see Josie Altidore, you suddenly think, oh, this is the US's A team. But remember, there's no Pulisic, no Fabian Johnson, no John Brooks, Jeff Cameron, no Clint Dempsey for different reasons.
Yeah, Bobby Wood not in there as well. I mean, you can keep going because you could, as you said, Clint Dempsey, and there's other players who are like on the fringes who are still playing in Europe. Timmy Chandler comes to mind, as well as other ones. Not just, I know there's some animosity towards Timmy Chandler, but there are many other people that could be starting for the U.S. So I do think there is that immediately jump to of like, no, all of our best players are playing domestically now, so this is a much stronger team than usual. I think that is probably true, that it's a stronger team than in years past. But I still think it's too easy to jump to conclusions when there are positives out there.
So the other thing is, because it was Bruce Arena's first game back, we all wanted this fresh start.
Yeah.
I think people wanted some like really hard, easy to point at evidence, maybe in the form of a 30-second streamable video, to say like, look, we're looking great all of a sudden, like, welcome back, Qatar, the US is back and we are great again, right?
And I'll say this, like, from like an objective, like what we try to do on this show is evaluate what we saw. That's why we watch it twice, to get the emotions out of it, to watch it again and see what we saw from that game. And from like an objective, like academic, when it comes to viewing soccer standpoint, there are positives. From an emotional,
there's no credit for listening to the show, by the way.
Yeah, true.
It doesn't count for college credit,
sadly. But from like a personal, emotional standpoint, I'm disappointed by that game. I definitely am. Yeah, I mean, I think I wanted to see the United States come in, look re-energized, look like everyone was happy to be there, get that early goal, show there's like, I wanted Josie Altidore.
The first two of those things happened, just the goal didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, but I wanted to see that, like, that obvious change, that it was like, oh man, all these guys are so happy to be back. Josie Altidore gets a goal on his 100th cap. Benny Feilhaber comes in and scores a free kick. Michael Bradley scores an Olympico. Like, just all these little like, it would have been so great to see. And I think that maybe is, in looking at it again, kind of unfair, because it is a January friendly. It is, yes, they've had 3 weeks to prepare. Yes, Serbia only arrived here, on Thursday? So there are some expectations that you're playing at home, that you're supposed to have gelled. But still, I think it's unfair to put my own personal, like, things that I wanted to see above reality.
Well, we did our preview show, things we want to see from this game. I would say a lot of the things we wanted to see from this game actually happened.
Agreed.
I think they came to fruition. It's just that it ended 0-0. Right? If this was a 2-0 win with 2 great goals that we can rewatch the video of and be like, then we'd feel a lot better. I want to start with, and I'd like to know, one of the things we asked for, US Soccer social media, to put out the starting lineup, as they do about an hour before the game, famously, then everybody retweets it, including us, not ashamed to do so. We wanted to know what the formation was, and we wanted them the graphic to have the orders that can make sense of the formation.
Yeah.
They did exactly that. I want to do a big salute to whoever's running the US Soccer Twitter account this weekend.
So they listed it with the players out there, like in one photo, and then they had like 4-2-3-1.
In
like,
big
they
numbers,
listed
yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
It still wasn't like they had them in the correct shape, because we have seen them do that thing where it's like
No,
a
but
4-3-3 shape roughly, but like Tim Howard is suddenly starting on the left wing. Yeah,
but it was like right to left defense, then midfield, then attacking midfield, then forward. Right? You could figure out who would be on the right and who would be on the left. And so that's not just that the social media guy or girl has upped their game. I think it's more that it was known what the formation was going to be, and it was known who would play where, right? So to me, that speaks to, I know this is reading a lot into one tweet, but it speaks to a preparation where we all knew exactly the shape we were going to play and the people that were going to be in certain positions.
Yeah,
fair?
Yeah, because they have to, submit the roster at a certain point, and there's a chance that Jurgen Klinsmann would just say, here are the 11 that are starting, and they have to do what they could, versus Arena saying, we're playing a 4-2-3-1, here's the team that's playing. Yeah. You can kind of figure it out a little bit from there. I'll say, credit to that. I'll say maybe what would have also been helpful is if the game kicked off at 4. Can I add that?
Well, not for me, because I was running late.
That's true.
My sandwich was served late.
But to be fair, you did arrive here and say, how is the game not started? Because it started about, 4:30, 4:25,
Eastern,
after an advertised kickoff at 4 o'clock.
That's to get you in early, I think.
I suppose so.
ESPN trickery.
Yeah. And then it was also ESPN trickery to have 2 number 5s starting for Serbia.
Yeah. Well, speaking of January camp, I feel like ESPN were a little bit rusty.
It felt that way
on this game. Yeah. So when you saw the Serbia lineup, which we always, behind the scenes, we always photograph the lineup when it's up on the screen so that we have it to refer to while we're watching.
Oh, and then I rewrite it, and I rewrote it with 2 number 5s and didn't notice it until halfway through the game, and we were like, "Wait, what's happening?"
Yep. So Maras playing number 5, left centre back was number 5, and Kurkovic was also number 5 playing right back.
Yep.
He was actually wearing number 13. Right.
Which threw us off a little bit.
I noticed it when he tackled Darlington Nagbe and he was wearing 13.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because for a minute we were like, man, that number 5 is everywhere. But yeah, so that wasn't a shining moment. There was just a few technical errors here and there, a few little confusing moments of
January friendly. Maybe ESPN just did a really good job of being on theme.
Yeah, sure.
Slightly sloppy, but mostly. I mean, the broadcast still went out, right?
Sure.
Should we get to the bright spots of the USA's performance then?
Sure. I do like to think, though, I have to add this, that I feel like Ian Darke maybe forgot this game was happening and was on his way to the barber and got a phone call you're supposed to be here in 2 minutes. I was like, oh no, I thought I had time.
I was thinking they woke him up from winter hibernation.
That could also be. He's looking a little shaggy. A little shaggy there was Ian Darke. Yes, but aside from that, should we get to maybe some of the positives we saw?
Yeah, maybe pick your... I've got my favourite. Maybe pick your favourite.
Sure. I'm looking, and I think probably one thing that I really did enjoy was all of the different quick passing moves that we saw in this game. And I think, again, it doesn't stand out probably because a lot of times it didn't lead to goals and it didn't lead to even really clear-cut chances. You'd still get, say, the Darlington Nagbe shot from outside the box that looked really good. It's still a shot from distance. It still doesn't necessarily count as a clear-cut chance. You had Jordan Morris shooting over and one of his shots being blocked. But
sorry, just to cut you off, just to build the case for the fact that this was actually a decent US performance, even if ultimately disappointing because it wasn't the big win we wanted. When you start to list the chances, it's actually quite a lot of half chances and things that we made and impressive moves. Yeah.
So I think in total there were 12 shots and the expected goals was still only 0.79 or something. It was still less than a goal. But there were lots of good chances.
Look at us talking XG.
There we go. But I think a lot of it
Thanks,
does come down to what Serbia were doing. We could talk about that later on. But I think a big part of it was that Serbia played a really well-organized game and clearly were executing their game plan.
And we're not just saying that in the sort of pretending we know what Serbia did, but actually we don't, way that some people say well-organized. We figured out Serbia's game plan. Maybe we'll talk about it later.
I think actually
keep our listeners in suspense.
I think maybe we should actually just talk about it now because we're probably going to reference it later on and right now. So it makes more sense to talk about what they were doing.
We kept our listeners in suspense for 5 seconds.
That's fine. I mean, so essentially what we saw them doing was... at times, we saw them in roughly something akin to a 4-2-1-2-1. And that's basically crowding the middle, but then when the ball would go over to one side or the other, you'd see that entire team shift over.
Yeah.
So there were times when you're like, is that their left back? And he was standing maybe 20 or 30 yards from the right side of the field.
Yeah.
So they would push everybody over and really make it difficult for the U.S. to find... consistent passing options.
Yeah, space through the middle is what they blocked off really well. Number 15, he says, looking at his phone, Panic, it was always sitting tight in the defensive midfield spot. He was essentially, I think, the sort of next generation Matic, right, the Chelsea player. And then 16, Djokic, or 10, Palisevic would come and sit next to him. It seemed like they took it in turns a little bit, but there were always at least 2 defensive midfielders ready to come through, but then they didn't step out and chase. Right? This is the big thing we noticed. Serbia deliberately did not overcommit to trying to tackle until we got nearer their box. They stood off and just were like blocking the way, but not coming in and letting you go past them.
Yeah, I mean, it was very gegenpress in the sense that it was like pressing to the side, but not overcommitting, not sending a ton of numbers in. But you basically, and my guess,
the freneticness of a gegenpress.
Right? My guess would be that their research revealed that the United States aren't the most technical of teams, and especially not a United States team that's coming 2 months before MLS kicks off, or 2.5 months, whatever it is. And so there was probably
it's less than 2 months.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I was thinking it's beginning of January when the roster was announced. But anyway, more so that it's not Barcelona who are just going to keep possession the entire time if you don't put them under really immediate pressure.
Right.
I think the idea is that the United States eventually will cough the ball up because they will try to force things through.
It was a little bit, Ian Dark and Tyler Tillman were joking about it in a different way, but it was a little bit England-Iceland, right? What Iceland did was essentially set the blocks up and not overcommit, just block your path and challenge you to try and pass through. And I'd say the US did a better job of trying to get through Serbia than England did of trying to get through Iceland.
I think so, because there wasn't
it's not a high bar to clear, I would admit.
But I think that what happens then is frustration builds. It did for me. When we first watched this, I started to get really frustrated by the lack of kind of really clear-cut opportunities and the United States doing a good job of creating situations that led to Josie Altidore being in on goal one-on-one.
Yeah.
But when you watch that game versus that England-Iceland game, so many sideways passes from England that would go left to right and right to left, and that was it. The United States did a good job of penetrating at times and trying to find those balls.
Yeah.
Yes, sometimes it didn't work. Yes, it didn't lead to a goal. But they were much better than I think England were against Iceland, and maybe then people will remember because it ended up being 0-0.
Can we make that the last time we mentioned England-Iceland?
Sure.
Just because it's been a rough week.
But the other thing I can add, and I think Ian Dark was the one who picked up on this, is the only time that Serbia did overcommit was when they felt like Josie Altidore was in a threatening position. And I think there were 3 different times that he was hacked down or brought down within the first 15 to 20 minutes.
Yep.
And it was pretty clear that that was the one note they had was he is big and strong and fast. Don't let him get a head full of steam. Take him down early before he really can create a chance.
Can we circle back to your original bright spot, which was short passing? Because the US did a much better job of sort of short passing, I think, that changed direction, 1 and 2 touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, and you had little clever give and goes that we have seen in the past from, say, Sasha Kleston to Darlington Nagbe. That was that great little outside of the foot scoop.
That was the most obvious one, right?
Yeah. But plenty of times the United States would be under pressure, and I think I was surprised to see them not cough the ball up because we have seen them kind of panic and be like, I'm just going to hoof it, or I'll just try to dribble through people. I call that the Jermaine Jones special a little bit because sometimes he just gets...
But he didn't do that.
He did not, no. And so I think instead we did see situations that I think would have led to either kicking the ball long or turnovers instead led to really nice counterattacking opportunities. There was the one with Darlington Nagbe that came about from, I think, a Serbia corner or free kick that the United States transitioned really quickly. Darlington Nagbe does a really quick turn. It's a lot of little one-touch passes, and it springs an attack.
I know exactly what happens. He accelerates down the left. I think he exchanges passes with Sasha Kleston, who does a good job of playing it back the other way and then forward.
Yep.
And so we changed direction an awful lot of times and had Serbia kind of on their heels in those moments.
Yeah, and so I think that is all signs of the United States playing that kind of quick, high-tempo soccer that we would like to see them play.
And this is fresh, right? We didn't see this under Klinsmann's US national team in the last few games at all. So that gives me some cause for optimism going into the March World Cup qualifier against Honduras and then against Panama.
All right. So what about you? What other positives?
One big thing we talked about on our preview show was we wanted to see evidence that Josie Altidore could do a job as a solo striker. I want to say we did see that. You talked about them having to foul him quite a lot of times, right? I also saw a lot of Altidore come short, drops the ball off to someone very quickly. One of the most obvious ones was the header down to Jermaine Jones in the first half, right? It's kind of just a chip ball into Altidore, but he's back to goal. Defender at his back, heads it into the path of Jones. Jones shoots just over, just wide, right? And that's only one example. There were so many times he would take it on his chest and knock it back to someone or control it nicely and lay it off to someone. It was very quick layoffs, essentially. Right. And if Josie can do that with people around him, plus the other stuff he can do and get in behind, then I think we're onto something.
Yeah, but I think the other thing that I enjoyed about him dropping and trying to kind of collect the ball closer to midfield and then play off somebody, that worked a lot of times. But the other thing it did was free up space. And so there were multiple opportunities or moments in which the one that stands out is in the second half. I think Josie drops really deep and a defender goes with him, and that frees up space on the left, and Bradley hits a really good ball in for Darlington Nagbe to run onto. There's was another one.
So Nagbe and Bedoya sort of come in behind him if Altidore comes deeper. Yeah?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think even having Josie there by himself, what we didn't want to see was him just kind of standing up there isolated.
Like the old Josie statue business that we're always frustrated with. Yeah.
And instead we saw a lot of dynamic movement from him, a lot of good running, a lot of good looks. I still think it could be better, but again, obviously, it's the first game of a January camp.
But it used to be that we said when we would like try and pick our lineups under Klinsmann's US national team, we would say we just can't do Josie as a lone striker. Right? It's got to be with Dempsey or with Bobby Wood. He's got to have a partner, otherwise he's kind of useless. Evidence against this. On this game, right? That's why I'm kind of optimistic about what I saw from Josie Altidore.
And then, strangely, I'm kind of optimistic in the Josie Altidore substitution. And the reason for that is because when Josie Altidore comes off, Jordan Morris comes on.
Yeah.
And it gives you an idea. Bruce Arena said Jordan Morris can play out wide, but we want to see him see what he can do up top.
Yeah.
And it was Josie Altidore playing up top, and then Jordan Morris coming in and playing the same role, doing the same thing, trying to get those balls over the top, but still dropping back and try to contribute in midfield.
Playing the same role, more or less, right?
And that's the plug and play aspect of it that we like to see. That we
wrote that on the chalkboard. Yeah, plug and play.
Kleshton comes off, Benny Feilhaber comes on.
Same role, same sort of thing.
Yeah, when you have wingers come on, you had Chris Pontius and
came on for Bedoya,
and then Juan Agudelo came on for Darlington Nagbe.
That one's a little different because we changed the formation a bit then, right?
But that's my point: is that you don't have Juan Agudelo playing out wide. He can play out wide for sure, but again, it was sort of we're chasing a goal. We want to get two strikers up there, so they basically dropped into a 4-4-2 diamond in the last 10 minutes or so, and then you
just as a way to have two strikers.
Yeah, exactly. But it's players playing positions that make sense. Now, yes, there are some outliers. The Graham Zusi one comes to mind. We got some
we'll talk about that maybe in a minute.
That's fine with me. But mostly, I just enjoyed seeing that it was kind of a consistent game plan that everybody knew.
Yep.
And so when Jermaine Jones comes out, for example, Sebastian Lletget comes in and does the same stuff.
Yeah. So and that was the ultimate plug and play because even at half time, I kind of enjoyed this as well. I've forgotten the name of the sideline reporter. It wasn't Julie Stewart-Binks.
It was not.
Will be soon, maybe.
Yeah.
We talked to her recently. I think she starts at ESPN quite soon. It was Arena said at halftime, Jermaine Jones is suspended for the Honduras game, so we're going to give Sebastian Lletget a chance in his spot to see how he can do. Right? And to me, again, plug and play, that's what we're talking about, where there's a Jermaine Jones role, probably when Jermaine Jones is fit and not suspended, 50% of games maybe, that Jermaine Jones does that role. If he's unavailable, we're going to see if Sebastian Lletget can play that role. And based on what I saw
in 45
minutes, I want to say yes. I would still have some nervousness about an inexperienced player starting against Honduras in such an important game. But he did a lot right, Sebastian Lletget, in that role.
He did enough for me to not be too upset if he gets called into that March camp. I will say I'm definitely not...
meaning like the 23-person roster that's named for the game.
I think so. As long as he continues to perform well and continues to get minutes for the Galaxy, maybe playing in that same position...
Which is what he does, yeah.
Then I would be more okay with it. But basically what he didn't do was hurt his stock. He showed that he can play. He showed that he can play smart, that he can scrap in the middle like Jermaine Jones can, like he can be physical in the middle.
There was specifically, I think his laces came undone.
I think as soon as he came in. It was like within the first minute that he was on the field.
So he scrapped in midfield, won the ball back when it was it looked like the odds were against him, right? It was not 50-50, it was tilted against him like 60-40, 70-30. Right?
Yeah.
He manages to hold off Serbian midfielders, play the ball back, and I think he starts to move out wide. I can't remember the chance that we end up with, but it's is it the one where Bedoya squares it across to right? Yeah, Bedoya plays this.
He squares it to Kleshton. Kleshton plays in Altidore, but it's Altidore. It's just a little bit too wide.
Yeah,
basically by the time he gets the shot.
One of the best chances, though, right?
Yeah, but again, it's clever passing, and then Lletget scraps, is physical, holds off attackers, plays the ball back, then continues to move, get the ball wide, drives forward, plays it forward, and starts an attack. And I think that all of that
energy, aggression, competitiveness, it's kind of all the things you want from Jermaine Jones. He may be the new Jermaine Jones.
Yeah, but I think where I am with it is that it would be a bit hypocritical of me to say nobody played themselves out of contention and then say he has definitely made me okay with him starting. One game is not going to do that, but it will make me more okay with him getting further looks in that spot.
Can I start calling him Sebastian Le Jones?
Nope.
Sebastian Le Germain?
You absolutely may not.
It's worth an ask.
Sure. Do you have more things to talk about, or should I do my next one?
You do your next one. Go for it.
I think we were both pretty happy. I'll include you in this one with Darlington Nagbe and everything we saw from Mr. Darlington. Yeah. I mean, that would be both defensive because we did see him work back and win some challenges and get nasty. But then we saw him very consistently look dangerous with clever foot skills, good moves, good technical ability out wide on the left.
And he's part of that short passing thing. A lot of it goes through him, right? He'll play a quick one-time ball, then he'll move, then it's part of a one-two. I mean, that Kleshton thing is exactly what happened with Nagbe. But there's a lot of that just deeper in midfield, right? That would up the tempo a bit of US passing.
And we've talked we've talked about it before. I know Portland fans have talked about it before, about his reluctance to shoot. How Nagbe is not a person who's known for shooting from distance. At least wasn't years ago.
He had a bash tonight.
He had 2 tonight, and I think, if anything, that is the one that speaks volumes to me about a player coming in who was maybe out of Klinsmann's favor. He was out of Klinsmann's favor, right?
Absolutely.
And to see a person come in
more out of favor,
and he is, again, so not known for taking too many shots from distance.
He could have been Benny Farvan.
Yeah, yeah, that would be the other one. And to see him come in and really put a head down, try to get a goal.
Yeah.
That to me felt a little bit like I'm here to make a statement, to show that I belonged and that Jurgen was wrong.
And the thing that really has me excited is that it seems like he has a position now. I didn't know this, but apparently about a week or 2 ago, Caleb Porter says, we've moved Darlington Nagbe around to various positions, but we're going to do him a favour this year and essentially put him in what I think is his most dangerous position. He's going to be our left winger. Now, Darlington Nagbe is right-footed, right? But it kind of works for him because he keeps drifting infield and shooting with that right foot or making passes with that right foot. It seems to absolutely work for him.
It does. And and that's, again, to go back to the Josie dropping deep aspect, what we kept seeing was Josie would drop in a little bit, but that was because Greg Garza, when he was in, Jorge Villafana when he came in, and then Graham Zusi on the right, would really push high, and that allowed Nagbe and Bedoya to push high as well. So then we had them wide but coming inside at times when Josie would drop, and so you kind of naturally had a setup in which Josie wasn't isolated again, and even when he wasn't in that space, you'd have 2 other players moving into it. So I think that worked really well for both Bedoya and Nagbe.
So what happens when Fabian Johnson comes back? I mean, this is maybe a conversation for February-ish, but would you prefer Nagbe on the left, or would you prefer Fabian Johnson on the left? If Nagbe's on the left, then Fabian Johnson goes to left back.
It's tough to say because I don't think either Greg Garza or Jorge Villafana were really tested enough for me to say they definitely locked it down. They definitely proved they belong.
Yeah.
Neither one of them.
Marino was talking up Villafana after the game and kind of not mentioning Greg Garza.
Well, I think that's because he's aware that Greg Garza conceded a penalty. He
didn't actually, but he did.
But he did. He was slow to react to a 50-50 ball. He went for, basically tried to head it, realized he wasn't going to be able to.
He tried to head it without seeing if anyone was coming. Right?
Yeah,
and then he realized he was going to trip someone else.
And so then he pulled up, and then the guy. And so maybe you can make the argument that the player initiated contact, but I would say that. It was basically only because it was right at the very corner of the box that it wasn't given as a penalty, but it was called as a foul. And the replay show that contact was absolutely in the box. So I think Bruce Arena is aware of that. I think he's aware that at times Greg Garza didn't cover himself in glory. It wasn't like he was just a lockdown defender. They had no opportunities, because I do think Serbia, at least in those first 20 to 30 minutes, focused their attacks down that left-hand side. So I would say maybe not Greg Garza so much. Jorge Villafana, he did get singled out by Bruce Arena. Wow, I'm just going to keep adding in Teal days. But I think it still wouldn't be enough for me to supplant Fabian Johnson from that left-back spot, especially because Nagbe looks so good. I would much rather have a Fabian Johnson at left-back, Darlington Nagbe at left midfield. I
did notice as well, Greg Garza, I think this is still in the first half, you audibly heard.
No foul.
When someone's running at Garza, no foul. And I think he's kind of wary of Garza giving away those fouls.
I think that was the second half, because that would have meant that Garza was on the left-hand side and would have been closer to the U.S. bench. I think that was the second half where they were screaming that. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe that one. But we've talked about the left-back spot. Let's move over to the right side for a second.
So Bruce Arena says, this is post-game, he says, the Graham Zusi at right-back experiment was very productive. Agree or disagree?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I think it was productive in the sense that it showed that he can play right back, that he can, and why he was doing it is what we thought. And this is what we talked about in our preview, that my theory was maybe Bruce Arena knows what DeAndre Yedlin can do and essentially wants to see who else can do a DeAndre Yedlin-esque performance, which is get forward, contribute to the attack, be threatening there, but still manage to get back and do some defensive work when necessary.
So let's because we saw him get forward a few times, right? And I kind of liked how Zusi would play the ball inside, and then he would choose the right moments, I think, to accelerate down the outside. When he got there, his crossing wasn't quite as exciting or as consistent as we like Graham Zusi crossing to be, right?
Or crossing period. Yes. Yeah, and so and maybe that informs why Bruce Arena doesn't want him as a wide midfielder, is because he has the energy and the pace, and I think probably the coachability is what we've kind of seen from Graham Zusi.
He's actually pretty fast, right?
Yeah, and so that makes me wonder if maybe that's what he wants, is a player who can come in and play right back but be very attacking and contribute in that form, and I think that he proved he can do that. I don't necessarily know if I think he is the man to play right back. The best chance Serbia had was that late shot that Nick Rimando saved and Taylor Twellman said was the greatest save of all time, even though it wasn't that great of a save. But it comes about because the player basically, the U.S. concedes possession. I'm not going to say it's necessarily Graham Zusi's fault, but he's out wide because the United States are on the ball. As soon as they lose it, that defender runs into the space between the right center back, who I believe was Steve Birnbaum, and Graham Zusi.
Yeah.
And Zusi doesn't really get goal side. Instead, he kind of does that like trail inside in case the ball comes back.
Yeah.
So maybe you could make the argument a little bit that a right back who has more experience there immediately drops inside. But I think overall he did a fine job.
So I'm thinking of him, especially when he was faced up one-on-one. I think it was the number 7, right, on his side, Plavšić. So you saw a lot of him squared up to Zusi. There were some times that crosses came in from his side.
Yeah.
There were other times where he made kind of last-ditch slide tackles as a guy was going past him. Like I know that looks impressive, but that's actually more like last-ditch defending, right?
Yeah.
Like when I've played right back many, many times, when I end up slide tackling at right back, it's because there's a guy faster than me or more skillful than me, and I haven't been able to close him down quite properly enough to take it cleanly, and I end up doing something semi-desperate to make sure it's defended.
Yeah.
Right? So it looks impressive, and it was kind of okay, and he didn't do anything necessarily wrong, but it doesn't fill me with enough confidence that this would be a good situation if we were, for example, going to the Azteca in June.
Right. I agree. I agree with that completely. And here's where I want to...
Imagine if it's like Tecatito on the left running at Zusi.
No, I don't want to even imagine that. What I do want to say, though, and I know we have more like individual player points, but I want to get to a larger point for a second here, which is even before the game, I forget who it was tweeted us, and we had a couple different comments like this, and I saw a lot of people just generally talking about this, which is the idea of if Jurgen Klinsmann played Graham Zusi at right back, we'd all be furious. But because it's Bruce Arena doing it, we're okay with it. And isn't that a little bit hypocritical? And my opinion on this is that if Jurgen Klinsmann did that, I would be mad. I would say this isn't a good idea, and it's because I don't think he would have given Graham Zusi specific instructions that I think Bruce Arena did.
He also wouldn't have told us 2 weeks earlier.
Nope, exactly.
Right? He wouldn't have said, we're going to try Graham Zusi at right back.
Exactly.
And he wouldn't have talked about the Graham Zusi at right back experiment after the game. Right?
Exactly.
It would have just been a weird thing that he did that we all had to try and scratch our heads about.
And it wouldn't have been Graham Zusi getting 2 to 3 weeks of practice at right back. If past was precedent, which from what we heard is the case, it would have been Graham Zusi finding out on Wednesday that he was going to be playing right back and sort of figuring it out on the fly.
Just giving a video of Cafu's greatest moments.
So here's where I would say the only issue I'll have is if in the next game against Jamaica, if Graham Zusi starts on the right wing.
Yes.
In which case, I'm going to be like, no, come on, guys.
You're wasting that time.
I want to see people sticking with where they're supposed to be playing according to Bruce Arena.
Yeah.
Okay? So if Graham Zusi plays another half at right back or doesn't play in the next game or comes in very late at right back, I'll be fine with that. But I don't want to see that rotation all over the place.
Played right back for Sporting KC last season.
True.
It's not like this is just a random thing that Bruce Arena's pulled out of the air, right?
No, yeah, but I think...
Peter Vermeer's thing as well.
But I think the bigger thing is I think a lot of people are looking at this game and saying... You know, if Jurgen Klinsmann had gotten a 0-0 draw against Serbia in a January friendly, we'd all be furious. If Jurgen Klinsmann had played Graham Zusi...
I'm not sure we would, to be honest.
No, but you know what I mean. That, like, I think that people would be very upset, that people would be calling for his head. No one's calling for Bruce Arena's head. If Jurgen Klinsmann played Graham Zusi at right back, people would be calling for Klinsmann's head, but they're not calling for Arena's. And I think, again, to go back to what we said...
I agree with none of that, by the way.
Well, yeah. But I do agree with the idea that, like, time and time again, Jurgen Klinsmann did not have any consistency in his teams. There wasn't that plug-and-play aspect of it that showed that everybody was on the same page.
Yep.
I do think
that there was a plan. There was a page. Then there were things on it.
Yeah, and so a big part of that, and this is, I think, where it comes up. Actually, let's stay positive one more time, and let's just talk about a player that maybe wasn't in consideration for Jurgen Klinsmann, and that's Benny Feilhaber.
Yes.
Because he was an example of a guy who I think came in, and again, like Darlington Nagbe, had something to prove, and we saw those quick moments of like, oh, right, that's why everyone thinks he's good.
Yep. Some great little passes, some great little moves. Yeah.
And that was one thing I specifically said in our preview, that one of the things I wanted to see was Benny Feilhaber do something that makes me understand why everybody has been clamoring for him to play. And I saw that 2 or 3 times in the cameo minutes he had.
Mostly through balls and passes, right?
Yeah, there was the really well weighted outside of the foot pass that like it was bouncing and he just kind of like tapped it, but it was like perfectly weighted for a counter. There was then
Did he play Jordan Morris through with that?
I think so.
Was that the thing where Jordan Morris ended up shooting from an angle?
I think
got deflected.
so.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. And then there was the one that he played a first-time ball out wide to, I think, again, Darlington Nagbe. And another really smart pass that I really enjoyed.
Like on the move and on the turn and right into Nagbe's path and through the defense.
It comes from, it was the one that came from Michael Bradley clearance that, like, Serbia headed right back to Benny Feilhaber and he one-timed perfectly.
Yeah.
So those moments where it was like, oh, right, he's really good.
Speaking of plug-and-play, Feilhaber replaced Sasha Kljestan, right? Who's a similar-ish player, playing a similar-ish role to Feilhaber. What do we think of Kljestan's performance? Because he's another one one that was mostly out under Klinsmann until the very end, and even then he didn't get to start in those qualifiers. So
I think I felt bad for him because we heard Taylor Twellman, I believe it was, talking about how Kleshtin kind of knows that this is his moment, knows that this is the most consideration, most opportunity he's ever had to start for the U.S. in big games. And so he trained for a month, he said, that he has been working on his fitness, that he wanted to come in as fit as possible and is ready to go. And he may have been fit, but I don't think that this was the best game we've seen him play.
It wasn't bad, right? It was more just like he didn't quite have the influence.
It was anonymous, I think. I
wouldn't go that far.
I think he got lost.
We talked about that Josie pass, right? Remember, it was Kleshtin put Josie through slightly to the right, and he ended up he didn't do the best. But that could have been an assist for Kleshtin. He had that header that went just wide. This game could have ended with Kleshtin with a goal or an assist or both.
Yeah, but I think when you're talking about your creative midfielder, you can you probably should, unless it's a catastrophic game, you should be able to pull out one or two moments that are this is pretty good. But I think overall,
and he was involved in some of those short, quick passing moments, right? He's part of the guy that can change the direction of the ball quickly and move the US up the field.
Fair, but again, I think overall he did not have the consistent performance that I think we wanted to see him have. I felt like he kind of, when Serbia had all those numbers in the middle, I think that's where you need a playmaker like Saša Kleshtin is supposed to be.
Did he get lost amongst those Serbian defensive midfielders we're talking about?
I think so, and I think this is maybe one example where he didn't get either notes beforehand or notes during the game of, look, they're crowding you out of the middle, you need to shift over here. Now, what we did see a couple different times was Jermaine Jones in the first half would go on a run and Kleshtin would sit, and they kind of swapped a little bit and rotated who would go forward. That was great because I think that keeps Serbia
the makeup of that three-man midfield.
It keeps Serbia on their toes. But I think as the game progressed, when Jermaine Jones goes out, Sebastian Lletget, I think, was a little more, I'm going to be all over the place, and maybe that forced Saša Kleshtin, not Sebastian Kleshtin, that would be weird, it forced him into kind of staying static. And I think that limited what he was able to do.
Is there also an argument that, especially in the first half, the way that Michael Bradley would cut, and he was Bradley as number 6 was one of the things Bruce Arena pointed out as being a positive from this game, right? Bradley would take the ball between the centre-backs sometimes, which meant that you've then removed one of our central midfielders. So then Kleshtin has to come a little bit deeper. Right. And also we're missing a midfielder. So it's kind of like he's a little bit outnumbered because Bradley's having the ball from the back, right?
And that's why we should drop Michael Bradley?
Oh, okay. You want to get into this? Because we saw a lot of tweets after the game about how the US needs to stop playing through Michael Bradley and we need to drop Michael Bradley. We need to move on from Michael Bradley. We could not disagree more with any of that.
Agreed.
If you rewatch this game, Michael Bradley is a lot of very clever, very simple things. He's also moving the ball very, very quickly.
I would say he does two things very wrong. In the game. And I think that they are notable. I think one of them is he mishandles a pass from Chris Pontius, which I think on second viewing is a bad pass from Chris Pontius. I think he hits it hard and he doesn't hit it right to Michael Bradley, so it forces him to react.
This is when Bradley sort of has to reach out his left foot. And a better player, an even better player might have controlled it, but it's not like
but it stands out because it looks like a pass to his feet that he coughs up, and then there's another one where he kind of underweights a pass and it gets intercepted. And to be fair, he then works really hard and wins the ball back.
He does win it back,
right.
Tackles.
But those stand out, and I think they stand out especially because that's at a point in the game when the United States is really pressing and everybody wants the U.S. to win.
Minutes.
And so I think one was last 15, one was last 5. But either way, it's the United States is really going for it, and so those stand out as you coughed up the momentum. You gave up this chance, and it becomes more memorable, and you don't remember all of the really, really smart passes that he made.
And either simple, smart passes just to keep the ball moving, which again is a thing we're really impressed with the US doing in this game. And then also some of those classic Michael Bradley diagonals, which I think were very well chosen in this game. He didn't force it when it wasn't on, but when it was on, he picked it out and he landed it onto Nagbe's foot perfectly, sometimes at left, Bedoya and Zusi out wide.
There was the one from Graham Zusi, and I think this is what was most interesting to me, is the one that really stands out to me was he picks his head up, he's kind of on the left central side of the field, picks his head up, spots Zusi, takes a touch, and hits a perfect ball. That first touch he takes, yes, it slows it down a little bit, which I saw was one criticism, but it slows it down because Zusi has to make that run. As soon as Zusi gets to a sprint, that ball is in the air. And it's perfectly weighted, and it's that left to right that we've seen him play. The other one that stands out to me is from right to left, and it's the one that plays in Jordan Morris when Jordan Morris is incorrectly ruled offside.
Yes.
But it is a perfectly hit ball off of his second, maybe his third, but I'm pretty sure second touch.
That was it. Michael Bradley went 1, 2, 3 touch most of this game.
And that's where I think I find myself very frustrated with some of the comments, because if you want to say he was bad, if you want to say you don't like him, then I guess that's your prerogative. But I feel like I kept seeing comments about, oh, he's so slow, he slows everything down. Sure, there are times when he would drop between the center backs and pick the ball up and try to get something going. And
that's the one part I get kind of frustrated with. And actually, though, I was saying that to you in the studio. Like, why don't we just let the centre backs pass the ball? Next time Chad Marshall collects the ball and
directly to Serbia.
Exactly. In Chad Marshall's defence, he does then slide tackle a Serbian midfielder and get the ball back. But I think that's the reason why.
But I think even a couple times that he would do that, he would pick his head up and then he would play. The first time I noticed it was like, okay, I see what you mean. And then what he did was get the ball, take a touch, and split 4 Serbian players.
Yes.
I forget what the German passing stat is. The packing stat, is that what it is? Or whatever?
Yes.
But that,
packing rate.
Packing rate. I mean, that would get so many points.
+4.
Because
easily.
it's,
Maybe more with the wide guys.
And so I feel like I kept seeing him do that. And then at other times I would see him, like, the easy pass was to drop it back to a center back to kick it long, and he would do a no-look disguised like pass that split two Serbian players,
like Leggett or something
and like
else,
play, and that was in his own 18. Like, that's him playing out of pressure, and I felt like he was very calm in possession. He wasn't so exciting, maybe going forward, which is part of
because he wasn't as involved.
I think that's the biggest thing.
One of the things I liked about Bradley's game, and maybe this is what Arena's talking about, is the discipline of this. Right, he would stay central. He didn't go charging left and right. Right, except maybe when he was doing some defensive cleanup. But for the most part, he would be involved in that passing moving forward. And once the ball went like into the attacking third, he would sit a little bit back from everything, ready to recycle. But not charging forward and leaving a hole behind him because he's responsible for being the number 6. And the thing I want to really get across to people is, international soccer, you pretty much have to play with a number 6, right? At least the way the US is doing this, we need a defensive midfielder. If you don't think it should be Michael Bradley, who do you think it should be?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure people have their nominations, and that's great. And
I'll guarantee you they're not as good as Michael Bradley.
I will guarantee that if you stop thinking of Michael Bradley as a number 10 who's creating opportunities and you start to see him as a number 6, which is what Bruce Arena said he was in the post-match comments, and you look at the way he played as a number 6, I think you're a little more impressed because he did a lot of good defensive work tonight. And people might not like this because I think a lot of people want to blame the players and are frustrated by the talent.
And they didn't want to watch a 0-0 draw on a Sunday afternoon, basically, right?
Agreed. But I think from things that we've heard, little bits and pieces here and there, I get the distinct impression that Michael Bradley ran the game under Jurgen Klinsmann. That it was Michael Bradley who kind of adjusted tactics on the fly, who told people where they needed to be. And I think part of the reason why, I mean, I think we've talked about this maybe, but we've definitely talked about this idea in the show, which is that when you are in a game, but you are trying to manage other people, you get lost a lot of times. And you get out of position because you're so worried about this guy not marking or this guy not tracking back that you stop to talk to them, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I'm out of position. And I think tonight, how many times did we see him work back and win the ball or make a smart pass or make a smart tackle while continuing to help people with possession and where they should be because he's a captain? But I think we saw him have that kind of freedom again and not have that kind of coaching mentality that maybe he's had to have.
Freedom to just concentrate on playing the game.
Yeah,
right?
And so I felt like there were times when
not
in the
filling
past,
in for Klinsmann's lack of instructions.
I think so. And people can say that we're Klinsmann haters, and I kind of am at this point because I think that's what I think happened is that we stuck with Klinsmann and stayed positive with Klinsmann for far longer than most people because I think we still thought that there was opportunities there. When it became apparent that things just were not working, that's where we switched. And I think that in that time period is when we started to see Michael Bradley visibly frustrated for the U.S. national team, and I think we didn't see that tonight. I think we saw him working really, really hard and really, I think, playing a pretty good game overall.
Do you think some of the anti-Michael Bradley stuff we saw, especially on Twitter, is politically motivated? Because Bradley kind of had that interview with Grant Wall where he came out against Trump's immigration ban with soft language, and then deliberately clarified it for himself later on that he was very sad about this and he found it xenophobic and he's very much against it. And I feel like there's still a percentage of the country that are going to attack someone who says that.
I think there are people who don't like Michael Bradley and they just don't think he's a very good player.
Because he came back to MLS, for example?
Yeah, I think that's when the kind of anti-Bradley sentiment starts. I think that was your point, and I would agree with that because I had it at when he... What was my theory? Was it when he wore the rainbow captain's armband?
Yeah, it started before that.
Yeah, it definitely started before that. It started with him coming back to MLS and being perceived as not challenging himself, wanting the money over the talent. Basically.
Rainbow Captain, an excellent Marvel character, possibly.
It probably could be one, or maybe already is. But I think so. I think there are people who have genuine frustration with Michael Bradley for any number of reasons, and that's okay. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand why there are people who don't like him. And with that said, yeah, I do think that some of it was he should stick to soccer because he's not very good. We don't need his political view. I do think that there's an element of people don't like to be reminded of political issues when they're watching soccer. They just want to be able to watch the national team. And so there's an element there of, I don't like that you might disagree with what he said from your political opinion. You might disagree because you don't want politics and sports mixed. And in which case, sorry, because we're talking about it right here.
And some things are too big, right? Like we deliberately don't talk politics hardly at all on this show. We talk a lot of politics off air.
We try not to, but then we mention Hamilton and get angry emails. So
which was not a political thing at all. But worth mentioning, just in case you're wondering, we are very much on the Michael Bradley page with the current executive order situation. And we don't want to go into the details about it, but just so everyone knows where we stand.
Yeah, absolutely. And
also, it's one of those things that's big enough that you can't expect the US captain to not have an opinion about it because you know he's going to be asked about it.
Yeah, right? I mean, I think so. And I think part of the frustration maybe was that he, by his own admission in his clarification, didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
And he said,
Grant Wall didn't prepare him for it.
No, and he said it was a fair question given what's going on. But I think when you're talking about we hope to get the win. Yeah, I'm going to be playing centrally. I'm going to be number 6. Yeah, we'll see what Ramsey says. Executive order. Yeah, okay. It can definitely be tough to switch, and I think you have to kind of be mindful. And especially given, look at ESPN's coverage of this game. They open up with Tim Howard's comments, and that is still in the news, and rightfully so. So I think if you're a U.S. player, you're always going to be sort of especially mindful of what you say when it comes to politics and issues of nationality and nationalism.
Did you notice in the US soccer tweet I mentioned with the lineups, Jermaine Jones was pointing to the US soccer crest?
No, I didn't.
He is. I don't know if that's a little dig at Tim Howard or not. I don't know. I'm just sort of wondering if Jones is just standing up for dual national players.
And I do want to say, speaking of that we were a little bit teasing of ESPN's coverage. I really liked what Herculez Gomez had to say, which is basically, if you're Tim Howard and you want to make those statements, you have to be specific. If you didn't see this coverage, it was essentially, if you're saying there's a couple guys,
isn't that dangerous? If you say it's Timmy Chandler and Jermaine Jones, that is explosive.
I don't think it was Jermaine Jones. That's the thing. I think it was Timmy Chandler, and I think it was probably Julian Green.
But whoever you name, you're potentially going to be playing alongside those guys in March.
Yeah, but I think his point, his being Herculez Gomez, is that to be general, to be non-specific, you're doing the exact same thing as calling a player out, only now you're calling out everyone.
Right.
Everyone who has dual nationality. You're basically saying it could be you, it could be you. And I think in reality, that's not what Timmy Howard was trying to say. And so I think Timmy Howard himself could be a dual national because he's Hungarian. Yeah, exactly. So
Hungarian parents, I think, or one of his parents is Hungarian. Yeah. He could have played for them, I know that.
Exactly. So I guess
we're very glad that he didn't.
Very, very much so. But I think, and that's where I agree with Herculez Gomez, though, that if you are going to be okay with impugning the effort of some people, but those some people are a percentage of the team, you have to be more specific. You have to say, at times, I have not enjoyed Timmy Chandler's focus on the team. Maybe that's changed, maybe it hasn't.
Performance against Honduras.
That too. And so I think you kind of have to be specific there. And so I think ESPN were right to begin their coverage with that, and I think it was an interesting way to start. And so I think with that in mind, it would be disingenuous of us to not say, we agree with what Michael Bradley said and wrote.
Right, and I donated to the ACLU.
There we go.
So one final thing that I was impressed with with the United States is, apart from that shot that Nick Romando saves right at the end, Serbia did not get behind the US's back line. The offside trap was not broken, as it was multiple times against Costa Rica.
Very true. Yeah? And I want to guess that one of your 3 favorite moments in this game was the third time that Serbia were called offside.
Yes.
Was it? Am I right? Was that one of your favorite moments?
Steve Birnbaum, you saw him doing the thumbs up.
And the fist shake.
It was half fist bump, half thumbs up.
Yeah.
So it's clearly we are working on this offside line. It is not broken. We are catching these guys offside. Well done, us.
And if you go back to
reminded me of Hugh Roberts, former Richmond Kickers player, the thumbs up to teammates.
And if you're a Bethlehem Steel fan or a Philadelphia Union fan, you should be very happy that he plays for you now.
Yeah, you should.
But it reminded me also that Bruce Arena, in that Facebook Live conversation, he was asked, like 3 weeks ago maybe, he was asked, what are you concerned about? And one of his first points was, our back line has not been playing to the level that it should be playing, and that's something we want to work on. And so I think you're absolutely right, that Birnbaum celebration is a sign that was something that was very much drilled into them in the last 3 weeks, that we are not giving any breakaways up. We're going to try to catch them offside. We're going to play a disciplined line, and every time they got it right, it showed.
And even the Jovanovic shot that Romando has to save, Birnbaum has cut off the angle, so he's really shooting from the outside, right? He hasn't actually quite got behind the defence and got one-on-one with a goalkeeper.
And look, Nick Romando made the save. That's awesome. Shout out.
Are you about to disagree with Taylor Twellman?
Absolutely. It's from a tight angle, and it's to the near post. And if anything, Nick Raimondo, he gets a save, sure, but he saves it back into the box, and it has to be like...
I think Zuzi has to hook and clear.
Exactly.
It almost up in the air.
Exactly.
Right.
So if anything, I would say that that's a sign of like how good the U.S. defense was, that essentially they forced the player into shooting in the only spot he could shoot, and the goalkeeper was standing where he needed to be.
Yeah.
So I think it was a fine save because all saves are good as long as the ball doesn't go in. But I think it's more so, again, a testament to the work of Steve Birnbaum and by default, the work of Bruce Arena.
So we have ended up being really positive about this US performance.
Yeah.
Do you think we've gone too far?
Probably. If I'm being totally honest,
Yeah.
I think so. And that's not like, I think this is the second time I've said it in the show, so I apologize, but that's not disingenuous. That's not me playing a part. Mm-hmm. That is me feeling like the more we talk about it, the more there are reasons for optimism.
Is it more us being realistic about what a January game really is?
I think it's
you're looking for like little seeds that might grow into mighty acorns by March to play Honduras. We're just looking for those little green shoots coming through that we can be optimistic about, and I think we've listed a lot of them here.
Yeah, and I think people, in as much as people don't want to hear us talk about politics, they also don't want to hear us talk about self-discovery and psychology. But I think it's also me.
It's going to be the Pete Holmes show.
Yeah,
you made it weird with Taylor Rockwell.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is a little bit me coming to terms with what my expectations were and how maybe those were unfair, and how you're not going to see this a Bruce Arena coach team. Bruce Arena is the number one term I think we would use to describe him, a pragmatist. He's pragmatic. We're not going to see this amazing tiki-taka, beautiful passing, eight-goal win.
He's not Bielsa or Sampaoli.
And I think there was a part of me that kind of expected that kind of wanted to see this this is a statement game. And the reality is we saw a U.S. team coming together. We saw him getting rid of some players that maybe won't be there in March. And we saw some people play themselves into consideration or play themselves into continued consideration. And I think that's what these games are about, and that's what we should be looking for both in this game and in the Jamaica game to come.
Okay, yeah, so obviously we'll have a preview of the Jamaica game, which, by the way, is in Chattanooga on Friday. This Friday coming. We'll have a preview of that maybe Wednesday, Thursday, right? Yeah, just to get focused on that. We nearly got our starting 11 right for this game. We weren't far off.
I think you were closer than I was.
I think so, too.
If I'm being... Actually, no, you weren't either, because it was Bedoya started out wide. I was thinking that I got it wrong.
I said Nagbe. You said Zardes.
No, I said Nagbe and Zardes. You said Nagbe and Morris. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
so
we were both
in your face.
Quite right. So, two bits of news I saw. I think Jeff Carlisle tweeted these after talking to Arena after the game. Jermaine Jones has gone back, and Sasha Cleshton has gone back to New York because I think he's about to have another baby. So those are the reasons those guys have left.
And actually, speaking of Jermaine Jones, I'm remembering you actually definitely got more right because I didn't. I said Jermaine Jones wouldn't start this game. So there you go.
My idea is that Arena will just watch him play and be like, I can't not start him.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think as you already said, but I think he did the smart thing, which is start him because he earned that start.
Yep.
But then get him out so you can see Sebastian Lletget and see if he can play.
And also so Lletget could see Jones play. He'd be like, hey, this is what we're looking for.
A very good
Watch
point.
This guy.
Yeah. Get more tattoos.
All right, so we'll have a preview of that game in the future. Anything else on this game, Taylor, before we move on?
No, just it was nice to see.
I feel like we've covered this 0-0 draw about as much as we can.
Nice to see more than 8,000 people in attendance.
Was it nearly 20, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Not bad.
No, yeah.
Not bad at all.
So that's good. That's good for a January friendly against the Serbia B/C team. I'll take it.
Certainly is.
Yep.
All right, Tyler, before we do scouting reports featuring lots of young Americans, we have a sponsor on today's show. Today's sponsor is SeatGeek. SeatGeek makes buying tickets online for sports and concerts less confusing than it's ever been.
That's right. SeatGeek have come along and created an app and website that makes it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell tickets. They do all the price comparison for you by searching multiple ticket sites and ensuring you get the best possible deal.
And so, for example, if you open up the SeatGeek app, as I literally have just done now, you search US men's national team, you will find the US versus Jamaica game in Chattanooga, Friday, February 3rd, 7 p.m. I'm hoping that's 7 p.m. Eastern. It's set, my phone should be set to my time. Right? Yeah. And it will give you a list of tickets available for that game.
There we are.
And you can get $20 off that ticket price if you use the SeatGeek app and the special TSS code.
That's right. So download the SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab and click add a promo code. Enter the promo code TSS. SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase.
So download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code TSS today.
Yeah, you can. And eventually you'll be able to buy tickets for some young Americans, I'm assuming. The same young Americans who are involved in today's Total Soccer Show scouting report.
So if you've never heard TSS before, one of the ways that we fund the show is by listener contributions. When people contribute to the show, we make them part of the TSS Scouting Network, and we ask those people to keep an eye on specific young players whom we think have promising futures. Very proud of myself for being grammatically correct.
It was well done. We have, as I said, we have 5 of those today. The first one comes from...
Are they all American?
They are indeed.
All right.
Yeah, we have many reports in the last couple of days over the weekend, but we focused on the Americans that came in.
So this is USMNT : the next generation.
Yeah, USMNT babies, I think. First report comes from Zach Betcher, scouting Timothy Weah, the 16-year-old forward for PSG's academy, also George Weah's son.
We can't not say it.
Yeah, we have to every time. Weah again found the back of the net in PSG's quarterfinal match up with RB Salzburg with a low strike from just inside the penalty area. Though his team would eventually lose 3-2, Weah has been impressive in the All-Cost Cup, with reporters using terms like star striker and danger man to describe him. Weah scored again in PSG's 2-0 win over Esperance de Tunis. I'm going to take a shot and say that they're from Tunisia.
They definitely are.
He megged the goalkeeper in the 19th minute. That means he has now scored in every game he has started in this tournament, 3 goals in 3 games.
All right. If you want to hear more about Tim Weah as head coach of the US Under-17s, John Hackworth calls him.
Okay.
Go back a few episodes, you can find my interview with John Hackworth.
That modifier was confusing for a moment because I was like, Tim Weah is the head coach of the US national team? That's a step.
Don't you accuse me of misplaced modifiers. Up next, we have Michael Hartman, H-A-R-T, scouting Josh Sargent, 16-year-old striker who was with the U17s, recently with the U20s. Mm-hmm. Michael says that Sargent and his dad appear to be doing a tour of Germany, and Sargent had at least one training session with Schalke. Mm-hmm. Will Parchman added on Twitter that this is an appropriate time to mention that Sargent is probably the best player on the current U17 men's national team, Andrew Carlton et al. Included.
It's a bold statement.
It is. Also, didn't Will Parchman also tweet, slow down, Schalke?
Yeah, because
there are so many Americans there.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, Josh Sargent training there. And I wanted to believe that it was a serious look, and it may well have been, but then I think...
Not till he turns 18.
It's mostly because I looked at Hartman's dad's Twitter account, and it was a photo of them at the Schalke game.
Sargent's dad's Twitter account.
Excuse me, yeah. And then it was a photo of them at a Werder Bremen game and on the Werder Bremen pitch, so it seems like maybe they were kind of doing the rounds, meeting different teams.
But on the Werder Bremen pitch, right? That means they didn't just get tickets and then do a mini father and son pitch invasion. Yeah. This is more like they invited us along to...
Unless they did. Maybe they're rebellious. Who knows? Also worth noting that the reason why Daryl emphasized Hartman in that last report is because we also have a report from Michael Hyndman.
H-E-I-T.
There we are, scouting Junior Flores, the 20-year-old central midfielder for still Borussia Dortmund.
Is he a central midfielder? I thought of him as a winger.
That's what Transfer Market tells me, so that's what I'm going to go with. Flores has, honest to God, played. That's what Michael says. According to DMV Soccer on Twitter, he played 45 minutes in both of Dortmund 2's friendlies during the German winter hiatus. He had an assist versus BSV Reden of the Regionsliga North. Sure. The negative spin on this is that Dortmund 2 did the same thing with him last winter break. He played in the friendlies and reportedly held his own, but once the season started up again, he sat on the bench for the second half of the Dortmund 2 season. So this is what I know, says Michael. Flores is healthy and ready to play. If he moves, it will be this summer. This is the chance of him making it onto the field, but the Dortmund U23 team is stacked and playing for league promotion. Also, the other American on Dortmund 2, Joe Zhao, has transferred to SG Sonnenhof Grossaspach.
I looked that up. It's the third Liga.
Which is probably good because Zhao also had not played for Dortmund 2 this season because, as Michael says, Dortmund 2 sucks for American prospects.
Right, that's why if you think about it, Pulisic skipped straight over it. It was U19s and then straight to the first team. Wasn't it Brian Schroeter telling you that essentially the U19s is the place to be?
It was either Brian Schroeter or the aforementioned Will Parchman. It was one or the other, I can't remember.
Maybe both of them said this. But the U19s is the place where these are our top talents. The U23s, and which is also Dortmund 2, right? It's basically the same thing, is the place where it's more like a holding pattern.
Isn't it more like holding pattern / you need to be a little more physical, so you need to learn how to play against bigger, older guys? Something like that, yeah. Speaking of getting toughened up.
Oh, yeah. Richie Garcia is scouting Emerson Hyndman, 20-year-old midfielder who recently went on loan to Rangers. Rangers, the Rangers. O-T-H-E, all caps, the Rangers.
Yeah.
Is this you calling Richie out?
A little bit,
All right. So, it's Rangers, right?
Yep.
Rangers faced Motherwell again, and this time Emerson got man of the match in his first start as the team won 2-0. The future of the USMNT, as predicted by Daryl, Richie says. I did do that, didn't I?
Sure did.
That Goalmouth episode. You gave me grief about it. I stand by it.
Fair enough.
And again, we saw the quick, sharp passing in today's game under Bruce Arena. Emerson Hyndman coming in doing that makes his team better in the long run.
Okay. That's still not what you said. You said he is the future of the U.S. men's national team.
I mean it. I absolutely mean it.
Okay. Christian Pulisic would like a word with you. I'm just going to keep saying that every time.
Who's going to be providing those passes? Anyway, we can talk about this later. The future of the USMNT, as predicted by Daryl. Emerson Hyndman set up the first goal for Rangers in their 2-0 win with some nice passing and moving, and then scored the second with a nice shot from outside the box.
Have you seen these goals, Daryl Grove?
I have seen these goals. Have you seen these goals?
I have seen these goals.
Yes, beautiful pass, beautiful shot, really exciting. I saw them on natsabroad.com. I retweeted this maybe last week. I think the website was launching soon. Mm-hmm. They put a lot of work in ready to launch this website. It is finally up. They are following national team players abroad. It's a really good site. natsabroad.com.
There we are.
And hello, Faisal, if you're listening.
Also, hello, Faisal, yes.
Richie adds that it seems like Hyndman has put on weight. In a good way.
Key distinction.
He looks thicker and more muscular. I mean, he's only 20, right? Mm-hmm. So it is when you start filling out a little bit. He also seems to have good movement off the ball. Every time I saw him pass the ball, I watched the last 20 minutes, says Richie, he continued his run or tried to run a channel. Richie concludes by noting, quote, I wrote, seems on both since I am looking through the eyes of a novice and don't know if I'm talking out of my arse, end quote. From what I saw, I don't think you are talking about your arse at all.
I don't think so either. And also, I think he said arse. So let's just, let's be correct in our reporting. Final report comes from Mason Kriz, scouting Marco Farvan. He says, the Timbers, Marco Farvan is a
18-year-old defender.
Thank you for that. Left back, I believe. The Timbers played their first preseason game, and Marco Farvan got the most minutes of any player. He has great pace and ball movement, but isn't expected to get much time with the first team this season. That said, left back is a spot where the Timbers don't have much depth, so Mason could see him getting some time in U.S. Open Cup matches or when Vitas, their usual starting left back, gets injured if he gets injured. Most importantly of all,
just seen the last bit.
I've added that because Mason says Freddie Adu was in this game.
So this is like a Timbers preseason thing. I know Freddie Adu was training with the Timbers because he knew Caleb Porter from like the U23s.
Right.
Now he's played for the Timbers in preseason.
Amazing.
All right, does he make the roster? Does he make this roster?
No, absolutely not. I mean, he might. I don't know. He may well make the roster. Who knows? Maybe Caleb Porter sees something in him. Maybe Caleb Porter is the one who can get that performance out of him at that next level. Who knows?
I want Freddie Adu to be the understudy to Darlington Nagbe. He can get 10 minutes when Nagbe comes out of a game in MLS.
Here's my question. Is there a chance the Timbers sign him and have him play for the Portland Timbers 2 team in USL?
Maybe. He wouldn't then come to Richmond, would he? Because of the Eastern Conference, Western Conference. That's disappointing.
But I could see that as like he gets a contract with them with the idea that if he performs there, then maybe he gets a call-up or maybe he gets consideration here and there throughout the season.
All right. I know, we'll keep an eye on that story. I'm really excited about that.
All right. We shall see.
If you would like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network and be assigned a young American to scout or an exciting young player from anywhere else in the world, you can go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe, contribute to the show, and we will set you up with a young player to scout.
Not that young anymore, but is it worth, should we assign someone Freddie Adu? Because it seems like he's all over the place. There's always crazy news about him. I wouldn't mind having somebody reporting on what Freddie Adu is doing at any given moment.
If somebody's willing to do that, I guess email us or maybe sign up and request it in the subject line. Say, I want to scout Freddie Adu, and we can definitely set that up. Go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. When you do so, there's a little note box you can fill in to say, give me Freddie Adu. Mm-hmm. First person to do it gets him.
You can tell us where he's playing, where he's on trial, what he's hawking that week on Twitter. It's really, could be any number of things.
Other players up for grabs right now. I actually haven't checked in a few days, so I may be wrong. But Ian Harkes just signed a homegrown player contract with DC United, son of John Harkes. I know quite a few people would be excited to scout Ian Harkes for DC.
There we are. And all of that Serbia team, I believe, is available if you're so excited. TotalSoccerShow.com/subscribe.
That is correct. Mm-hmm. All right, Taylor, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, champ.
Listeners, thank you for listening. If you've made it all the way to the end of an entire show about the USA's 0-0 draw with Serbia in January, then you are a genuine US men's national team fan, a genuine US soccer fan. Well done to you. We'll be back on Tuesday with a new Total Soccer Show. Later in the week, we'll preview the Jamaica game, and we'll, of course, have a review of the Jamaica game on Friday. All that to come on this week's Total Soccer Show. Until then, it is goodbye from us, and we'll talk to you soon.